Three, two, one. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. The four good-looking men you see on your screen right now are the Paleo Research Group. We actually have one more member that can't be with us tonight, but he'll be with us again shortly, so stay tuned. So let's start out by introducing the members. First of all, Doug Thornton, Mondo Gonzales, and I started this group about 3 years ago. And recently we've added two new members. And I'll introduce Damas Reed. Damas has a fiber optics company. You're working in Oklahoma right now, is that correct?
Yep.
And so Damas got started with us about a year ago. Actually, we actually met Damas when I met Mondo. We were at a conference together. So Damas has been around with us for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years and 2 months, I think. Later on, Nick found us. We'll talk about that in a minute. Nicholas Dagle, we call him Nick, and he found us on YouTube, and then we were impressed with some of his research, and he showed us a few things in Missouri, and we got acquainted with him, and we decided to adopt him into the group. So thanks for being with us. As some of you know, Mondo Gonzales is one of the hosts of Prophecy Watchers. He's an archaeologist. He's actually our team's archaeologist. He's written some books, and he is the founder, I think, of the Psalms 19 project. You have some teammates on that, don't you?
Yes, sir. Got one in Virginia and another one in Idaho.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I am Brent Hite. I spent a big majority of my time in the insurance industry, and then I went into the oil and gas industry. I got interested in these topics that we discuss, which are controversial sometimes, but we like to discuss things about um, Bigfoot, aliens, UFOs, giants, and but our main theme is to look for archaeological evidence of the ancient past. We are kind of under the impression, I think I speak for all of us, that we don't always agree with everything that is taught to us through mainstream history and archaeology. We have questions, and sometimes our questions lead us to the field, and we dig in dirt, climb mountains, float streams, and crawl in caves in order to find pieces of the puzzle that we can put together and see what the true story is about our ancient past, especially here in North America. So a little bit about what our main focus is. We try to reach out to personal property owners that think that they may have something of significance going on in their property, and we try to help them interpret what's happening on their property. The five of us, including Doug, each have a set of skills that we bring to the table, and our combined knowledge helps us to put together some of the pieces of this puzzle and be able to tell a story about what may have happened on people's private property in the ancient past. So another reason that we like to reach out to people and help people on private property is sometimes we have more jurisdiction on private property depending on the state laws, and some laws are more lenient in some states than others, but it gives us the opportunity sometimes to explore things that have not been documented before, and that's always a bonus. So in a nutshell, that's basically what we do. Mondo, why don't you start out by telling our audience how you and I met, and Doug, all the three of us actually met at the same time, and Damas, you were actually there too. You came along later in the group, but Mondo, just briefly tell our audience how you and I got acquainted.
This is actually kind of fun because this is where you realize that God is working. So we were at the Tim Alberino conference in Nashville back in 2022, I think is when it was. And so one of the guys I was with, Tyler, our video editor, he ends up sitting at a table just before I was able to get where he was. And so he had a spot for me, and I showed up, and it's like, oh, okay, here's the table. And I made some introductions to you, Brent, and also Damas. and then we started talking about just the interest that we have, and you had some interesting topics to share of some projects, and I was like, well, I'm very interested in expanding my horizons, and so we ended up talking, and then from that we kind of followed up on some of the stuff that you had, and kind of the rest is history.
So yeah, you guys came to Arkansas, and we did a little bit of exploring, and I got you guys' feet wet on doing some caving and crawling through some caves and getting muddy and dirty and having some fun. So we mentioned that Mondo is our team's archaeologist, and you wear a few different hats in your line of business there, Mondo. Tell us a little bit about. I'm just going to pick one thing. Tell us a little bit about the Psalms 19 project. Tell us about your scope and what you look at and the process of taking some of these pictures that you take.
Yeah, it's been one of the things I've been interested in for a long time is astronomy, and took astronomy in college and had several telescopes when I was younger, and then really got into ministry. And then later, after my kids moved out, I was able to refocus on the love of astronomy and certainly connecting it with certainly the God who created all of it. And a few years ago, we had the opportunity to expand the project. Uh, Originally, it was just going to be me and my little scope, and then we had some benefactors come in who really loved astronomy and wanted to see God's creations be shared as wide as possible. Certainly, Prophecy Watchers has a great footprint, and so we ended up building a very extensive observatory, and with very nice equipment and with a roll-off roof. The whole thing just opens up. I'm actually photographing right now. I had to get that done, and then we started taking pictures, and it's amazing what we can do just at an amateur level. I'm not a professional astronomer, again, taking astronomy college, but in the sense of the technology has become very accessible to really anybody in their backyards, even or portable scopes. And so later, if you want, we can share the screen and I can share pictures and stuff if we really wanted to. But when people say, "Oh, really?" But then you show them. I tell people, "Oh, this is what we got," and then when I actually show them a picture, they are blown away. And to me, it just shows again the majesty of what God has created and for us to discover.
Amen. So, and we will share some of these pictures on the screen along with some video clips. Um, Damas, we already mentioned that you met us at that first conference that we all went to together. Um, Tell us a little bit about your first experience with us in the field. Um, I'll remind you, we went to a mound site first, I think. So we put you in charge of something over that site. Do you remember what your first task was?
Yeah, I measured the mound, and
Right.
I think it was a ceremonial mound. And what we realized is there were stones that were separated, I think, every like 15 feet that were covering about three-fourths of the mound, the top of it. And it's just very unusual. But the experience was incredible to be able to be out with you guys, spend those 3 or 4 days exploring and fellowshipping and talking about these topics that are unusual, but to me, very fun and exciting to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about. Yeah. So,
So we found a stone wall on that property that was
mm-hmm.
pretty extensive. And so I think I remember you with a shovel in your hand. What were we doing? What were we trying to accomplish at that wall with the shovel?
Well, we wanted to see how deep it went because obviously it was man-made. It was stacked, and so we wanted to see how deep it would go in the ground. So I think we were digging Mondo. I think all of us had a turn on the shovel, but we got to about 3.5 feet deep, and it kept on
Right.
going. So we decided to call it quits. But it was pretty astonishing how deep that layering was going under the ground.
Right.
And
That wall was already about 3 feet above the ground, and then we dug down an additional 3 feet. So we were trying to determine the age of the wall by the amount of sediment that had stacked up there.
yep,
And then remember, we went to the bluff shelter caves on the side of that mountain. I think we all got chiggers and
yeah,
ticks, but we went there. We was looking at some of the bluff shelter caves. We actually found some artifacts under one of the overhangs, and then we get in the boat and we went to the island. And I think you were filming at that point when we were on top, Damas. Do you remember what we pointed out in the distance and what we come up with? on top of that mountain?
Well, wasn't the where that island was located? There's other hills in the distance, and they triangulated a certain point, and
Right. They
you
made
try to use geo mapping to discover something. What was that you're
well, we decided that each mountain, there was two mountains in the distance. They were all elevation about 1,250 feet high. We were on top of one of them. We could see the other two that looked pyramid in shape, and
yep.
they made a perfect equilateral triangle. So that was the thing that was significant about that site. And then I remember we went back to my parents' house and we had some good food. We were hungry. We climbed that. That mountain was a tough climb, and it was in August, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really tough climb. And I remember you played the organ for us. You remember that?
Yeah, it was a old school organ where you had to pump your feet to make it
Right.
go, and it was quite an experience. So y'all had to endure that painful. It was fun though.
Oh,
I
we had
appreciate,
fun. We
appreciate
had fun. And we had entertainment. It was great. So,
Absolutely.
Nick,
Yeah.
the first thing that you did with us, we were actually with Heather Coons, and Mondo was with us, and Ariel Privet, my niece, was filming for us that day. So tell us about the Spanish fort. First of all, tell us how you found us, and then we'll
Well,
talk about the Spanish fort.
I'm kind of the black sheep of the group, huh? Um, so it came about because reading Genesis 6 and realizing that a lot of these megalithic structures, mounds, cyclopean rock walls all across the world, that I don't think they were made by primitive man, um, but that they were made from the Nephilim giants that were before and after. Well, with that, I'd wanted to really see if there was anything around me that was
Something that you could
historic.
go look at locally. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm a nurse. At the time, I was doing hospice nursing. Actually, worked 5 days a week. I have a family of three: a 8-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and a wife. So I don't really have much time, and I'm working on my master's in nursing of education. So I don't really had much time to, you know, go all
Go
the way
out
to the Ohio Valley to look at different mounds there. Like I'd love to. I'd love to go see Serpent Mound up there. But so I really was looking around Greene County, Missouri to see if there was anything that I could find. And it was funny because I found the Spanish Fort Cemetery on the local website, on the local library website, saying that it was a ancient earthwork, and there's a huge stone pillar out there that was actually inscribed in the 1930s from an E.M. Shepherd, who had said that he believed that that earthwork was made by an advanced civilization or an advanced tribe that actually predated the known Osage.
Mhm.
So, and I remember when I was looking around, I just happened to type in YouTube Ozarks and mounds, and the video that y'all were just talking about, that's the first one that came up. So, um, that's when I got your information off of your YouTube page, and I found you on Facebook and started messaging you to see if you'd be interested in coming and checking that out. And
And
I
we
mean,
were. We
yeah,
did.
yeah.
And
And also, I
Mondo
had,
came out with us, and
yeah,
um, we got to investigate this site. And I want to go back because I believe we have missed something. You remember when we were there previously? I think it was in June, and all the
yes,
leaves were on the trees, and we didn't get to go there in the wintertime to where we could see things better. And I believe by looking at the lidar images that there's another mound out there that we've missed. Now, this thing is a circular enclosure, right? And
yes.
and so we found that there's a couple of gaps in the enclosure, which leads us to believe that this is some sort of gateway. And I'll let Mondo speak to that in a few minutes on
Can I
what some
add
of these
something?
things. Yeah, go ahead and add something.
So after we've gone out there, I've met another gentleman who he's done a lot of archaeoastronomy. And he's gone over there and he's surveyed the mound. Well, he talked to the lady that lives across the street, and he told me that she has reported seeing orbs at night over that cemetery. So that I just thought that that was very interesting to add about this earthwork.
Yeah, that's something we hear commonly about some of these earthworks. Sometimes there's orbs associated with them.
Mhm.
And so we had a good time filming that day. We learned a few things, and we got more acquainted with Heather. And you've worked with some of our other friends, Kent Christian, um, Wayne May, Fritz Zimmerman. So you've written a couple of articles for Ancient American Magazine recently, right?
Yes.
And so now you're working on a book too.
Yeah. In my spare time, whenever I'm planning on hitting it hard. So I graduate with my master's coming up in at mid October, and I want to finish this book. Um, Whenever I met y'all at that Mexican restaurant, I know I had went over a lot of the research I was that I've been working on for over 2 years. It's an article I found actually from the Fritz Zimmerman's book. He has a book where it's a whole bunch of old newspapers. I think it's the Encyclopedia of North American Giants,
Mm-hmm.
and it has just different newspapers where it talks about 7, 8, 9 foot skeletons that have been found in earthworks. Well, I found one for a 7 foot giant that had been found here in 19, it was the end of 1934, that was found in a shallow mound off of the James River. So I've spent a lot of time researching, looking at old plats, and I've found where this shallow mound would have been at.
Right.
Um, and there's actually an old berm structure up on the bluff where it's at.
Yeah, and you and I spent some time up on the James River. You remember what happened to me? That that crazy thing that happened to me. Um, it was what was it? It was near. It was during hunting season, so I
Yeah,
had forgotten my orange vest and my orange hat. So I went to Walmart and picked one up, and we got on top of this hill, and all of a sudden I feel this pressure, and it's like my nose starts burning, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? I remember complaining to you about it, and then it just kept on and on, and you thought that we were going to have to cancel the trip
I
because I
thought you
was
were having I thought you were having some kind of supernatural attack or something.
and so what happened
Rebuke you in
was
Jesus' name.
I just I discovered it was getting hot. It was in the fall, but it was warm that day, and we were hiking up that hill, and I took my hat off, and all of a sudden, all this pressure went away, and my nose started to feel normal again, and I was like, "What?" And so I put the hat back on, and then it starts again, and I realized that the hat had two metal pieces right here, and they were pressing on my temples, and they were causing me major irritation. So I finally just took the hat off. Anyway,
And you
didn't
had
get
those and then
didn't
you
get
had
shot
those
at that day. So, but we got to resume what we were doing, and then our film got corrupted, and we didn't get to make a video out of that. So we're gonna have to revisit that site.
you had those indentations for a few hours too.
Yeah, yeah, they stayed in my head for a while.
Yeah.
So I wanted to speak a little bit about some of the instruments that we use while we're in the field. I mentioned earlier we are an archaeology team, and we each have different skills that we bring to the table that make us a good team, I think. And one of the one of the most simple tools that we use is a compass. And we'll talk a little bit about that more when we go into archaeoastronomy aspect of this presentation. But the compass tells us a lot of things. First of all, it gives us a direction of travel, but not only that, we can use the compass to establish lines. A lot of these lines that are incorporated into these earthworks coincide with the solstice or the equinox, or sometimes they just point to the compass directions. But we can use the compass to try to orient ourselves in such a position that we can tell what's going on. Let's say we're in a mound complex and there's different mounds scattered about. We can use this compass to try to figure out if there's some kind of pattern on the site, and it'll help us determine if there's something maybe of a religious component or something to do with the stars or the planets or the moon or the sun at these sites. So a compass is one simple item that we use. Um, Another piece of equipment that we use, we have a pretty powerful black light, And a lot of times we can go into caves, or if we're near a bluff shelter or a rock face, we can shine this black light on. And if there was ever any paint or markings or what have you on these stones, a lot of times they'll show up with the aid of a black light. So we use a black light quite a bit. We also have a FLIR camera. We have a couple of them, I believe. And we use these cameras to, they give off a heat signature, and we're able to see things that we can't with the naked eye. Sometimes, I know on occasion we saw something spooky in a cave one time that it looked like a wolf actually moving about in the cave, but it was some kind of weird heat signature that was putting off the shape of a wolf kind of. So we use that to see things that you can't see with the naked eye. Another instrument that we use is the tri-field meter. A lot of these places that we go to, for whatever reason, there's some kind of magnetic anomaly or electric anomaly. There's currents. There's ground current. We know there's ground current. We know there's electricity in the sky, but some of these places have different things going on in the ground. Maybe there's quartz crystal in the ground, or there's some kind of anomaly there. And so sometimes we can pick these things up with the aid of this tri-field meter. So that's kind of the tools that we started out with, along with magnifying glasses and binoculars and different instruments. But recently, Mondo and I have teamed up with some people that we've been working with on a project that we can't talk a whole lot about at this point, but we can tell a little bit about some of the technologies we've been using there. So first of all, Mondo, we've had Lidar for a while, and Nick has actually used Lidar extensively lately, and I'm going to get him to discuss a little bit about that in a few minutes. But Lidar is a means of looking at the curvature of the ground minus the grass and trees, basically, to put it in layman's terms. So you can see the contour of the ground. That helps you identify stone walls, stone structures, mounds, Indian mounds or earth berms, different things. You can do that. If you didn't have this instrument, you'd spend hours walking over a big piece of property trying to locate something. So this helps us easily identify something that gives us the impression that there's a man-made structure there. And sometimes we use it to find the most probable place where there would be a cave entrance. And there's just different things we can find with this LiDAR technology. So we've had that for a while, but the new things that we have access to, Mondo, first of all, is ground penetrating radar. And we've used a couple of different units lately. So tell us about the two units that we used and what they're capable of.
No, just really quick, I'll say as well that the infrared camera that we have has been very helpful in the sense of finding cave entrances, because it allows you to see in the extreme. So if it's really, really hot out, 90 degrees, you'll put the camera out there and you'll see cold air many times coming out of the exits on the cave. And so you'll be able to see, oh, look at that. There's a vent there. And then also, if it's super cold, you'll see again, because the typical temperature in a cave is around 57 degrees or so, relatively. And then, so to be able to be where it's real cold, you can see the warm air coming out. So that's a very, very helpful when you have those extreme to find cave entrances. And so that's just, again, a very helpful tool. As it relates to the ground penetrating radar, we've been using two different kind of systems. When you talk about ground penetrating radar, they will often make a distinction between maybe an antenna that is on what looks like kind of a lawnmower, where you drag it across the ground, or a sled.
Right.
And those will have various types. You have some where it's high frequency, where you're looking for high resolution at a shallow depth, or lower frequencies, 250 megahertz or so, which you'll go down 30, 50 feet. And so again, there's pros and cons for each one of those. Another thing that we've had the opportunity, at least to be a part of, was where you would take these GPRs and put them on drone, and where it doesn't have to rub along the ground, but it approaches it a little bit differently. And we're just at the point too, where we might get involved with some seismic resistivity machines that will use seismic waves, again, to kind of map out corners and boundaries underground, or the electric. Another one is called the ERT, electrical resistivity tomography, which is again follows kind of the same line where you use electricity to do it, currents in the ground. So it's really, we have found as well lately where we've had some that are instant, where again it's designed to give you an instant picture out in the field rather than having to take the data, go back to the lab and or whatever to the computer, spend a couple of days crunching the numbers with different algorithms. So we've had some success at both of them, but we've also realized the challenges that it's not like on TV. There it is. Oh wow, look at that, and then everything's done. No, that there's a challenge to water in the soil, the type of soil, et cetera, et cetera. And but we've been having some success for sure, and some confirmation of our readings.
All right. So that kind of explains the ground penetrating radar. I failed to mention we also have GPS devices that we use in the field to actually, pinpoint our location. And recently we were able to and establish a property line by using GPS. So those come in handy in the field also. But now I want to ask you, Mondo, again about, or not again, but I want to ask you about another technology is the satellite radar, basically. So we've used that recently, and tell them how we were able to get these scans from the satellites and then confirm it with the ground penetrating radar.
It's been pretty fascinating because it's I would say a newer technology in the sense that the idea is that uh, the oil companies who are looking for valuable things like oil or even water or minerals or other sort of metals are have been using this technology to be looking for basically ionized signatures of metals. And so when we first heard about this, we're like, okay, it seems it's a little bit too good to be true. But so we were able to take some scans of some property and and then be like, okay, well, according to this scan, it's showing there's a certain signature over here. And so we went, and it would also show a certain level of cavern or chamber or tunnels, basically a cave system. And so we took the ground penetrating radar out, and we were able to confirm that wow, the GPR coordinates of what this was showing was able to be confirmed. And so to me, it's so fascinating, the technology that is available now, and it's only going to get better.
Right. And so we actually um, are acquaintances with the guy who's on another team, but his teammate is the one that developed the synthetic aperture radar, which is what they recently scanned underneath the pyramids in Egypt with and found the columns. I don't know if you guys have seen that in the news where there was columns found under was it the Pyramid of Giza?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's some of the most advanced technology that's out there, and it's very expensive. We haven't asked to use it yet because we don't want to pay that high fee right now. But as technology advances, some of these the prices of the technology will come down, I'm sure. But we do have access to it if someone did need that. It might be pretty expensive at this point, but we do have access to some very advanced technology right now. So that's just something that gives our team more credibility. It gives us an edge on some other teams, maybe because we have access to these kind of things, and we're very fortunate to have come in contact with some of these people that can share this technology with us. So, Damas, tell us how you got started researching these type of topics and being interested in archaeology and ancient history.
Sure. Started back probably February of 2013 is when I got really put a lot of time and energy into it. But to back up a little bit, really my dad, his whole life, science fiction. You met him, Brent. I mean, he went along to the conference where I met you guys at.
Right.
And, high school, I read Cheers to the Gods. We're Not the First by Eric von Däniken and some of those things. So I always thought there's something here to this ancient astronaut theory. I just didn't know how to really glue that to the biblical theory. So I always just kind of let that up there, that little shelf of possibility, but always the Bible was my foundation. So in 2013, got a check in the mail. I was like, and I was sick, and I was like, look at the check. It's like, all right, so taxes were taken out. That's a lot of taxes. So I just started researching one day, where all the taxes go?
Right.
Federal Reserve. So Federal Reserve just opened up a whole door of, Creature of Jekyll Island, just how it was created, the currency system. And that research led me to go back to the Bible to get some love and just do that. And rereading the Bible, you get to Genesis 6, where Nick mentioned before. And it's like, all right, so the days of Noah, what is the days of Noah? And it was that itching thought in my brain that led me back to the Old Testament and completely explore that to the nth degree, which led to Noah, fallen angels, and which led me to a lot of authors such as, Steve Quayle, L.A. Marzulli, Tom Horn, which ran into a lot of those guys. Met some of them too. Now you guys work with them as well. But those are some of the early guys, really foundational to get me up to speed on what they've been researching for so many years. And not everyone agrees on everything, but I think there is a common theme, and we all are Christ focused, and we have a passion for it. So that's kind of how I got involved in all this stuff. And it was a passion to find other people that had the same Christ-focused passion, but for the ancient, history of it. What is that world that they have kind of hidden from us? And we're just trying to seek out, what is that truth? And all truth, I believe, lead back to Christ. So it's just that discovering that truth is fascinating, and to find a group of guys that want to discover that truth as well is just is a blessing. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of why I'm here. And
good deal. Our friend L.A. Marzulli has coined a phrase. There's a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the people of the world, and we agree with that. And you were talking about some of your first people that kind of mentored you in some of this. Steve Quayle was probably the first guy I heard on talk radio. And I also dug into the Genesis 6. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Genesis 6 says that there were giants on the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and saw that they were fair, and they took wives, and they went into them, and they had children by them, which were the Nephilim, or the giants. So that's something that's been a major topic. And that leads into other things like Bigfoot, aliens, and UFOs, which these things are briefly mentioned in the Bible. And us being biblical based, we have to address some of these questions that we get from people, and we even have questions ourselves. Another person that really helped me out, I was really struggling with the Genesis 6 narrative that I was taught in my church, which is different from what I believe now. But Chuck Missler, the late Chuck Missler, helped me understand a lot about what was going on back then. Also, Tom Horn. I guess one of my all-time favorite books is called On the Path of the Immortals, which really opened my eyes. And I read that book in just a couple of days. I was just fascinated by it, and it really shed light to some of the questions that I had. Then L.A. Marzulli was one of my early influences, and now I have a whole shelf full of his books. And I've been fortunate enough to work on his team with Mondo. And I've been to a few places with LA, Ohio, California. We did some work in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. And it's been really great to work with him. And then I guess probably Tim Alberino has played a big role in some of the things that I've researched. And I've attended a couple of his conferences. Actually, the Mondo, Damas, and I were just at Montana, Bozeman, Montana, for a recent conference. And we got to fellowship a little bit there, hang out with Tim for a little bit. So that's kind of how I got started in this. We seem to have all run into the same people that we were influenced by, and now we kind of work in the same circles with some of these people. So I think it's really cool. So Nick, you've become fascinated with Lidar. Yes, and you've been working on some projects. You've been working with, I mentioned earlier, Kent Christian, which is one of our friends that also has an ongoing site that he's working on that we've been able to observe um,
Yep.
in Missouri. And then you've got in contact with Wayne May. You've written a couple articles for his magazine, uh, Ancient America magazine. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. The first article is supposed to be in there this upcoming September.
Okay.
So
And then have you met Fritz Zimmerman yet? Have you got to work with him yet?
no, no.
But you will be soon.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Heather did send the articles I wrote to him, and
Hmm.
she said he replied with a heart emoji, and that means a lot coming from him. So,
Yeah, because you're lucky if you get a reply from him.
so I consider myself lucky, I guess.
Mondo and I has had the privilege to work with Fritz. Mondo had more occasions than I, but I did get to work with him in Ohio for a few days. Real interesting character. He's written several interesting books about the Nephilim, and you can find some of his books on Amazon, probably all of his books on Amazon. So let's get back to the LiDAR thing. You've been doing this stuff with LiDAR. Explain what you've discovered and some pieces that you've put together through using LiDAR.
So, I mean, I come into contact with Lidar thanks to you. You helped set me up and get the ball rolling with that. Really, for me, it's kind of become a hobby.
Right. A
Just
hobby or
looking,
an obsession
yeah, yeah.
or both.
Most guys my age like to watch football. I like to look at lidar. And you don't get nerdier than that. But um, so Kent, going back to Kent, you were talking about him.
Mhm.
Kent's told me that he feels like here in the Ozark area that he believes that there is proof that Nephilim giants lived in this area, and it was a massive, massive community of them, um, especially down in the Table Rock Lake area. And he pointed out that there are several mountains down there that really look like pyramidal in structure. That he
Mhm.
wonders if they could have been pyramids at one point. That whenever the Great Flood came, covered it all up. Who knows? I mean, none of us really would know unless we were
Yeah, I
there when
mean,
it happened.
you know,
Uh,
we've seen pyramids that have been discovered, especially in the last uh 100 years, 150 years. Machu Picchu was uncovered,
yeah,
Teotihuacan was uncovered, and then more recently the Bosnian pyramids. Um,
yeah,
so it's likely that there could be some pyramids here that are just covered in flood silt and we don't recognize them as such today. Uh,
yeah,
not every pointed mountain is going to be a pyramid, but it's likely that some could be.
exactly. So I like LiDAR because I meant it helps you to remove all the trees. It removes houses, buildings, whatever it may be, and you can just look at the foundation, the basement layer.
All right.
I'll show just right here in my background. So like right here, I mean, this doesn't look like much. It's just a high point. But then
Mm-hmm.
on LiDAR, you can see more definition.
Right.
You can
That's
see,
amazing.
yeah, I mean, all that jagged edges, that's all rock outcropping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I mean, it just shows more definition and really what's laying underneath the foliage that we cannot see looking from Google Earth or even looking right in front of the
Right.
structure, mountain, whatever it may be.
Right.
So,
Great tool. Great tool.
yeah.
So we've mentioned the word archaeoastronomy a couple of times in our conversation tonight. And Mondo, if you will, break down what archaeoastronomy is and how is it used and where can we find it and what's it for?
Archaeoastronomy, just archaeology and astronomy mixed together. And really, this has got to be one of the most ancient concepts that has existed since the beginning of mankind. Um, so what generally what you see is first of all you got to have an understanding of the basics of astronomy, the natural order, constellations, other things, understanding the background. Certainly, the Mazzaroth does appear in the Bible, in the Book of Job, and other places, and so we recognize that people have been looking up at the heavens for a long time. Well, when you come into archaeoastronomy, what has been recognized is, for example, we'll take the Octagon Mound as an example in Ohio. And we were there just a couple of years ago, and we were doing some documentaries there. And one of the things that we were discussing there was recognizing that many places, the mounds included or other things, I'll get back to the octagon mound in a minute because that's a little bit more advanced. So typically what you might have is you might have a site where you have some pillars or some towers or some columns or whatever, and it's lined up with either the equinox or it's going to be lined up with the solstices. So in the wintertime, the sun is very low on the horizon. And in the southeast, you'll see the sun appear, rise very, very low on December 21st. Well, then, as we know, as you go through the time of the year in March or in the fall, in September, as an example, you will see the sun rise up basically directly east. Well, then in the summertime, it's rising in the northeast. And so what cultures have done is they've made these connections between the archaeology or the structure, the engineering, so that a certain thing will line up with one of those three. And that's I would say that's very basic. It's sometimes you'll have where they'll build a tunnel or a doorway, and the sun on, let's say, the sun setting on the December or maybe the summer solstice, where the sun will light up right down the tunnel, and it'll only appear once a year on the specific spot. As the sun goes down, it's at a certain spot in. Okay, so that's one angle. Well, at the octagon mound, it's a little bit more advanced in that the octagon mound, not only does it have some of those features as it relates to the sun, but it's set up to show you what's called the lunar standstill schedule, 18.62 years. And the way that the moon works in its rising is it goes on this 18.62 year cycle where it'll actually rise farther northeast than the farthest time that the sun will rise in the summer. And so, but it takes the sun takes a year, basically to go back and forth to those points, where the moon, it'll go there and it'll go actually all the way to the southeast, even far further than the winter solstice. So this is kind of fascinating because when you look at how the octagon mound was designed, it's set up to mark both of those situations, which again, you would have to build over 18.6 years. So, and then there's other things that we could talk about as it relates to some of the mathematics. And of course, L.A. Marzulli has done a lot of documentation on this at different mounds. Using trigonometry and other forms. So this was advanced, something that you would need paper, in your brain or something you're writing on. It's not something you just sit there and do. So that creates a lot of challenge for some of the conventional ideas that this was all done by Native Americans, which I think even some people like Brad Lepper, he's a great example of a traditional Mesoamerican archaeologist. And he actually admitted it just recently that, well, there's something else at work here. So maybe these guys really did have advanced, even though we don't advanced understanding of mathematics and archaeoastronomy, even though there's no evidence that they do, but we clearly can't deny the evidence. So that's kind of the basics.
Yeah, that is. And so what we have here is we have a 50-acre site, and you and I were there with L.A. Marzulli and Fritz Zimmerman a couple of years ago. We have a 50-acre site. This octagon mound is huge. First of all, how did they survey this mound? And then where did they get the knowledge? They didn't sit there for, you said 18.62 years. They didn't sit there and put a stick in the ground and mark this thing over time. They had some knowledge that came from somewhere. So what are your thoughts on that? Where did they get this knowledge?
That's really the question. And so this is where, again, I'm doing research for a book right now, just discussing the Smithsonian and some of the early, like Squire and Davis. They came out with their book in 1849 as it relates to the mounds, and they are very, very clear in their understanding of what they were recognizing. These are great scholars, and they're actually very complimented by the Smithsonian even to this day. But they are crystal clear that they believe that there was a previous civilization, not the modern Native Americans, if you want to say modern, in the last 2,000 years or 1,500 years. There was a previous prehistoric mound builders civilization. And so they recognize that, wow, what they were able to accomplish is far superior than anything related to modern Native Americans. And so the question is, you have these two groups. So where did this information come from? Well, it certainly didn't come from the modern Native American groups, which is not an insult to them. They'll tell you we didn't build the mounds. But there was another group. Now it's not conventional today. People have gone away from that whole idea, but it's still there in the original writings. And I think that there's a different agenda at work here rather than just the science of the archaeology.
Right. And
Brent, can I
yeah, go ahead.
Just quick question. So an ancient culture developed this over, I said, 18 years. What is the benefit of a culture to do this? I understand, like, it takes quite a bit of mathematics and time, effort, energy to accomplish measuring out this time period. But what would knowing this information and doing this benefit a culture?
I'll give my answer, and I'll let Mondo speak to that. What I would say is this is a religious component of some sort. I believe, religion throughout history has been a giant motivating factor to get people to cooperate in such a manner that they would have to done. I mean, we're talking about moving millions of metric tons of dirt here. I mean, volumes of dirt, large volumes of dirt, to make these mounds and these different berm walls. I mean, the berms are like what? They're about 20 feet tall, Mondo, and about the moats are about 12 or 15 feet deep. There was a lot of earth moved at this site, and I think there was a religious component there. I think we can see some of this. The Bible speaks about pagan religion to some extent, and I believe that some of the things that we find in these earthworks or incorporated into them, some of the practices like Mondo mentioned, the openings in our tunnels or gateways where on a certain day the sun shines through. I think that had to do with sun god worship. I think a lot of this is tied to what the Bible calls Baal worship. I think there's different variations of it. And I think somehow or another it came from the Levant area and made its way over here, because a lot of let's say in England around Stonehenge, a lot of those mound sites, and there's several in England all over. There's several Stonehenges actually, but a lot of those mound sites look identical to some of the things that you'd find in the Ohio Valley. Mondo?
When you asked about what is the benefit, well, it's interesting that if you look at what it took, for example, again, like Cahokia, just millions, and millions of cubic feet of material, and how many thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of man hours to make it done. You don't do that because you're bored. I mean, you're living out, subsistence living. And so the only reason why you would prioritize something like that would be, as Brent said, there's a religious value. There is no beneficial value in the sense of wasting stuff like that. You could be hunting, you could be farming, you could be doing those things. But, even as us as Christians, why do we fast? Why do we deny ourselves for a lot of things? There's no real benefit in some of those denials. In fact, it ruins some of the pleasures that we might enjoy as a sinful person. But we do it because of religious reasons. We do it because we believe that's what God wants from us. And so in the same way, they would develop these rituals and these cultures in order to worship the heavens. And this is why in the book of Deuteronomy and other places, God is so adamant against worshiping the host of heaven, the sun, the moon, the stars, even the planets, to those degrees. And so you would have a lot of those things, especially in Babylonian. But as we know, as Brent said, that stuff came over and it's here. And so we for us, we or at least we're open to the idea that this was knowledge given to either Nephilim offspring or other giants of some kind, as it relates in the Bible. And as we've talked before, some of the stuff that we see in the book of Enoch, the book of First Enoch, which again we know is not scripture, but it's just interesting that it tells you the traditions of what you have in Second Temple Judaism, where these fallen angelic beings were giving knowledge, astronomy, all through the book of First Enoch. You see this where they're telling the laws and the orders of the heavens. I mean, the word astronomy means the laws of the star. That's what astronomy means, and so they were giving that. So that's what I would say is it a benefit? It's not always a benefit for sure in the sense of the practical ways, but it's a benefit in order it brings a cohesion there from an anthropological perspective as it relates to religion and culture and society.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Nick, any questions? Comments?
Yeah, I want to isn't it fair to say, I feel like I heard this recently, but pretty much every single civilization had some form of sun worship. Am I correct in saying that?
I would say a lot of them did. There was different variations of different religions, just like we have denominations today. We have a
Mhm.
lot of people that saying that they're Christians and they're following Christ, but there's different variations of that. I think you had that in pagan worship also, Mondo.
Absolutely. There's, if you go back to certainly in the oldest religions, Sumeria, Egypt, there's no doubt that the sun, it's almost universal, had a place as either again an Egyptian being part of the original creator, being Ra, or one of the first creations, or everything emanates from the sun. Which again, according to that kind of primitive thinking, even though they were very brilliant, I mean, we know that the Babylonians are the ones that gave us, the 60 what it says decimal or something system, whatever circles, stuff like that. So they definitely had some understanding. But where'd they get that knowledge?
Mm.
That's the fascinating thing about it. Which again, we just keep our options open.
Right. So we're about to get to our time limit here. I want to say that we're sorry that Doug Thornton couldn't be with us tonight, and we hope that he'll be with us the next time that we meet. And hopefully, we can start doing this on a maybe a monthly basis. Do one a month. Could we shoot for a goal of that?
Doable.
And
to.
hopefully, I've got a plan to explore a couple of caves in October. I'm hoping. So there's some caves in the southern Ozarks that I think that would give us some good experience and give us something to look at, something to film, something to share with our audience. And I want to welcome Nick and Damas to the group. You're officially in here now, so we're going to put you to work,
Awesome.
and we're going to make some videos together and have some fellowship and have some fun. So I appreciate you guys being on tonight. And anything else we need to add before we go?
Thanks, Brent.
All right. Thanks for being
Thank you.
here. Thanks, Mondo. Thanks, Nick. And I
Thank
will
you.
see you guys and talk to you guys soon. Again, if you have something going on your property and you want somebody to take a look at it, sometimes we can make that happen. We made it happen with Nick, and he ended up joining the team. We've been to different people's property, and they've allowed us to have free range on their property in some cases and help them get an understanding of what took place there. And it also gives us an opportunity to collect data and research. So reach out to us. I'll have my email in the description, and you can contact me, and I can talk with the team and see if you got something that we think's worth looking at. So without any further ado, it's been good having you. It's been good being here for our audience, and thank you for being on. We'll see you next time. And that's a wrap.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.